Hello everyone, I'm going to read a blog post by France's most influential left-wing political figure. Facing Trumpist imperialism, don't give an inch. So, Macron will not sign the EU-Mercosur agreement. Good. The French National Assembly had unanimously adopted a resolution introduced by La France insoumise against this free trade deal. And then what? First, let us note that since Macron has brought nothing to a successful conclusion, the French are going to be defeated and isolated. The Europe that protects us looks rather ridiculous from a French perspective. And how is the famous Franco-German couple doing? This tired old joke. The final outcome of Macron's diplomacy is the same on every continent, a string of disasters. Africa? We are expelled. The Americas? Trump openly mocks Macron and the French. Asia? After the visit to China and the threats that followed, let's forget about it. Europe was the missing piece. Now it's done. Von der Leyen will sign the EU-Mercosur agreement on January 12. Whatever happens, then the European Parliament will vote. Will the majority coalition of Social Democrats and the right hold? Or will the right and the far right reach an understanding and prevail? Once again, the 2027 election looms larger and larger. How many more disasters will Macron have unleashed by then? The abduction of Nicolás Maduro by Donald Trump's United States has sent shockwaves around the world. They are reverberating across all political spaces. Parallels with Nazi expansionism and its theory of Lebensraum are resurfacing. Trump's desire to annex Greenland recalls the fate of the Sudetenland abandoned at Munich. Coming after the aggression against Venezuela and threats against Colombia, Mexico and Cuba, the gravity of the situation calls for vigilance on all fronts and for carefully targeted mobilization. The choice of words matters. First and foremost, abduction or kidnapping, as used for political activists. Capture or arrest, as preferred by establishment media. France 24 even dares to speak of the ousted president. The shame that comes from very top of the state, capitulating instantly to Trump. Trickles down through the pyramid of hired pens and loyal Atlanticist mouthpieces on both the right and the so-called left. Because all varieties of right-wing and left-wing Atlanticists share the same unbearable arrogance. Whatever one thinks of Maduro, despite our clear condemnation of human rights violations, and so on. The unspoken message is, he had it coming. This is how they hypocritically relativize Trump's crime. Once again, a new political dividing line is emerging. On one side are the Atlanticists of the right and the left, the hypocrites of the right and the left. On the other side are the sovereignists on the left and the right. At this point, part of the so-called left wants to shift focus. We must bring the cursor back where it belongs. Enough useless talk. Everyone is entitled to believe whatever they want about Chavismo. We do not demand that others share our analysis. What we do reject is anyone trying to impose that of the United States on us. Because this is not the issue. The issue is resisting Trump's invading imperialism. That is the central rallying cry regarding Maduro's abduction. It means organizing protection for Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, and Greenland. We must hold the line of the tipping point. That key point is the demand for Maduro's release. The hypocrites refuse to talk about it. That very evening, watchdog journalists were chasing after me, asking, "Do you want Maduro back?" So they could do their dirty work. Mélenchon refuses to criticize Maduro. Le Monde, Libération. The implication being that criticizing Maduro on the very night of his abduction is a prerequisite for having the right to protest against Trump. You're calling for his return, meaning his return will mean a return to human rights abuses. Blah, blah, blah. This press has condemned Chavismo since its very first electoral victory. How could we forget Liberation's full-page headline? Chavez's anti-Semitic creed, a crude manipulation that I dismantled at the time by exposing the doctoring of Chavez's Spanish text, and above all by contacting the president of the Jewish community of Caracas. I even went to see him in person. He was certainly not a Chavista, but a committed Francophile. He stated clearly, "Chavez has many flaws, but not that one." Already then, Libération and Le Monde were doing what they always do, aligning themselves with US policy and the Democratic Party, their long-standing friend. They did not care that this meant swallowing the Venezuelan far-right and social democracy, which had been crushed, and the ballot box when Hugo Chavez was first elected. We know the mechanism and its soundtrack. It's the same one we saw on October 7th. Principles no longer matter. What matters is drawing the line between the camp of the good and the camp of evil, condemning all war crimes. Whoever commits them is no longer enough. Clever, aren't they? You must absolve some crimes by denouncing others. From there follows the legitimacy of hunting down the non-aligned who refuse this blackmail. All of this functions as a tactic. It validates the law of the strongest. The strong then remain free to dispose of other peoples and nations, of international law, and of human morality itself, even to the point of justifying genocide. Let us stick to what can unite us, rather than trying to divide and impose views on people who will never accept them. Everything comes down to one point. Maduro must be freed. Refusing to demand the release of Nicolás Maduro and his wife is legitimizing the abduction. It is being more Trumpist than the Venezuelan right itself. Because we have seen the Venezuelan parliament unanimously and across all parties singing the national anthem in the National Assembly to demand the release and return of Nicolás Maduro. Let us summarize. For us, the insoumise, there will never be any question of endorsing the propaganda of the Venezuelan far right and the traitors who make it up. They are the shame of their country. They organized Hugo Chávez's abduction. They challenged every election except the ones they won. They organized attacks and assassinations month after month, spread slander, and forged alliances with drug traffickers. And without fear and ridicule or infamy, their pathetic clown of a Nobel Peace Prize winner, rejected by every moral and intellectual authority in the world, called on Netanyahu to intervene militarily in Venezuela. Today, even Trump says he commands no respect whatsoever in Caracas. The main difficulties faced by the Chavista government stem from the US embargo, backed by their pitiful European Atlanticist lackeys. Chavismo sought to share oil revenues, subsidized women's cooperatives, helped victims of natural disasters across the region and distributed oil to those who could not afford it at world market prices. Chavez was abducted by the opposition on April 11, 2002. They staged his execution until the people of the barrios rose up to demand his release and saved him from death. Chavismo has never rejected the results of Venezuelan elections, unlike Macron. Chavez alleged defeat when he lost the December 2nd, 2007 referendum on a third presidential term. Nicolás Maduro accepted his election defeat on December 6, 2015, immediately recognizing opposition governors and mayors. That very opposition then used this as a pretext to attempt a coup on April 30, 2019 against Maduro, a putsch led by Juan Guaido, president of the new opposition assembly recognized by Maduro himself, before staging a fake invasion from Colombia alongside drug traffickers. So, what are the sugary smiles worth that reduce Chavismo to the pretext of human rights violations, brandished by Venezuelan neo-Nazis? Patience. We must hold firm once again. As with genocide, everyone will eventually come around to our position. Just link to be on the front line of a photo. As usual, from the very first second, they gave up everything. Soon, they will understand just how well the French people can tell the difference between those who cave on sovereignty and those who defend, under all circumstances, their country's independence in the name of its founding principles. Because there is no popular sovereignty without independence. The insoumise therefore formally disagree with anything that looks like stabbing the Venezuelan people in the back, while they unanimously demand through their National Assembly the release and return of President Nicolás Maduro. We had proposed a joint appeal by organizations without adding any political line. Some insisted on inserting their talking points and removing any reference to Maduro's free return. As a result, the insoumise can no longer sign the text. As we had warned, we attach no importance to logo soup unity statements that legitimize an abdication and erase the demand for Maduro's free return. We will sign none of them. We will not associate ourselves with any declaration that includes a condemnation of Chavismo. And this applies equally to Colombia, Mexico, and Cuba. The approval of a well-behaved establishment press of the right and the left leaves us indifferent. From the very first day of our electoral victories in the Americas, they have always hated everything we loved and supported, and calmly accepted every dirty blow struck against our side. Their vocabulary has always mirrored embassy talking points. The hatred of the French media party and the establishment surrounding it towards the insoumise, and toward me personally, is unprecedented in France. We know it. Nothing new, but it is time to understand where it comes from. Because it comes from far away. Look at this New York Times article that seeks to downplay Trump's statement against Europeans. It is written by one of the paper's stone-faced ideologues, the equivalent of the Olivier Perroux at Le Monde or Dove Alphon at Libération, and their henchmen. These people denounce La France Insoumise, the leading left-wing parliamentary group, as a cult, and violate our private lives, in open contradiction with the ethical norms that once prevailed in French journalism. Where do they get this audacity? Read how Trumpists in the US itself talk about the insoumise in the New York Times, one of the country's flagship newspapers, under the pen of Christopher Caldwell, a columnist who recently adopted the pro-RN, Rassemblement National, line of Trumpism with headlines like "A revolution before our eyes, how Islam will transform France and Europe." Now it turns on the insoumise. Look at France, where a growing population of Arabs and Muslims is increasingly vocal and increasingly effective politically. La France Insoumise led a coalition that won the country's national elections in 2024, though its plurality of seats did not allow it to take power. Led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the party promotes a kind of nationalized mondanism. It defends Muslim and non-European immigrants around a program that includes income and wealth redistribution, and a fierce critic of Israel. There is nothing illegitimate about this. But if France remains a democracy, it will increasingly be a country that fights Zionism, and it is reasonable to expect that this will make it less compatible and less reliable only for the United States. Everyone understands, but note this: worse than Christians. Which Christians? Those who defended Pope Francis when he came to Marseille to speak for drowning migrants? Liberation theology? Hated in the US? Christians massacred in Palestine? Bombed in Lebanon? Martyred in Sudan? Zionism, Muslims, even Christians, the obsessions of Trumpist America align perfectly with those of right-wing and left-wing neoconservatives in France. In the end, the landscape is being redrawn by Donald Trump, his embassies and his influence networks. We, the insoumis, want nothing to do with this kind of relationship with the United States, whoever their president may be. That is their business. Unlike others, we do not dream of a return of a Democratic Party or figures like Joe Biden, who was merely a weaker Trump without his will, audacity, or candor. We want France to be respected by the United States, including by its current president, Emmanuel Macron. We give voice to the other France, the France of popular independence. We defend the unity of its people, so that they may remain united, whatever the religion of each of its children. Thank you for your attention, and please feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. I look forward to reading them, and thanks!